What happens when a single moment changes everything you thought you knew about love? When Victoria Hale accidentally sat on a stranger's lap in a crowded cafe, she never imagined it would shatter the carefully controlled life she'd spent decades building. Daniel Brooks was just trying to survive another day as a struggling single father. Neither was looking for love. Neither believed they deserved it. But sometimes the universe doesn't ask permission before it rewrites your story. Stay until the end to discover how one accident became their greatest gift. And please, hit that like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels across the world. The afternoon sun cut through the windows of Riverside Cafe with the kind of golden insistence that made everything look softer than it actually was. Daniel Brooks had learned not to trust that light. It was the same deceptive warmth that made you believe things might get easier when they never really did. He sat in his usual corner, the one partially hidden behind the overgrown fiddle-leaf fig that the cafe owner kept meaning to trim but never did. The worn leather chair had a rip along the left armrest that his thumb found automatically now, tracing the familiar tear while his coffee went cold. He came here every Wednesday at 2:15, when Ellie was safely settled in her after-school program, when he could steal exactly 90 minutes before he had to pick her up, before he had to become dad again instead of just Daniel. Not that he minded being dad. Ellie was everything. But these 90 minutes, these were his. The cafe was packed today, unusually so for a Wednesday. Some kind of tech conference had let out early, flooding the neighborhood with people in expensive casual wear, all of them talking urgently into wireless earbuds or stabbing at tablets with the kind of focus Daniel reserved for keeping his bookstore from bankruptcy. He watched them with detached curiosity. These people from a different world, a world he'd left behind when everything fell apart 3 years ago. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. Probably another reminder from the bank about the loan payment due next week. Or maybe Mrs. Chen from 2 doors down, asking again if he'd consider selling his building to her nephew's development company. Everyone wanted the bookstore's corner lot. No one wanted the bookstore. Daniel took a sip of coffee, definitely cold now, and opened his book, a first edition Steinbeck he'd been meaning to read for 6 months. The familiar weight of it in his hands was comforting. Books didn't demand anything from you except attention. Books didn't leave. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" He glanced up. A woman in her mid-30s stood beside the small table adjacent to his, her arms full of a laptop bag, coat, and what appeared to be 3 different phones. Dark hair pulled into a bun that was trying its best to stay professional, but losing the battle. Sharp features that might have been beautiful if they weren't so clearly exhausted. "No, go ahead," Daniel said, already returning to his book. He heard her settle in, the rustle of expensive fabric, the soft thud of the laptop bag hitting the table, a frustrated sigh that she probably didn't know she'd released. Daniel had gotten good at not looking, at being present but not intrusive. It was a skill you developed when you spent your days around people who came to bookstores precisely because they wanted to be left alone. His phone buzzed again. This time he checked it. Ellie's school. His heart did the thing it always did, that immediate spike of adrenaline, the what-if scenarios flooding his brain in the 2 seconds it took to open the message. Reminder, book fair tomorrow, volunteers still needed. He exhaled slowly, set the phone face down on the table. Everything was fine. Ellie was fine. The world wasn't ending today. "I'm sorry, excuse me, is that seat actually free?" Daniel looked up again. A different woman this time, younger, phone pressed to her ear, gesturing impatiently at the empty chair at his table. "Yeah, it's—" But she was already moving, already talking to whoever was on the phone, something about quarterly projections and unacceptable delays. She grabbed the chair and dragged it to a nearby table where 2 other people in identical tech conference attire were waiting. Daniel went back to his book. Got through maybe 2 sentences before he heard the commotion. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't see. I thought that was—" He glanced up just as the exhausted woman from the next table stumbled backward, her foot catching on her laptop bag, her body suddenly off balance and falling directly toward him. Time did that thing it sometimes does, where everything slowed down just enough for Daniel to register what was about to happen, but not enough to actually prevent it. He saw her eyes go wide, saw her arms pinwheel in a useless attempt to catch herself, saw the coffee cup on her table tip and begin its inevitable descent toward the floor. And then she was sitting on his lap, not beside him, not near him, on him. For a moment, neither of them moved. The cafe noise continued around them, the hiss of the espresso machine, the murmur of conversations, someone's laughter from the counter, but in their small corner behind the fiddle-leaf fig, there was only shocked silence. Daniel could feel the warmth of her through his jeans, the weight of her settling against him in a way that was so unexpectedly intimate it made his breath catch. She smelled like expensive perfume and coffee, and something else, something like rain even though it hadn't rained in days. Her face was inches from his. He could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes, the faint scar above her left eyebrow, the exact moment when shock shifted into mortification. "I am so sorry," she breathed, and her voice was different than before. Not the clipped professional tone she'd used when asking about the seat, but something softer, more real. The chair, I thought. It's okay," Daniel managed, even though his heart was doing something complicated in his chest that definitely wasn't okay. There was a woman. She took the chair." "Right, yes, I saw that, but I thought there was still—" She was moving now, trying to extract herself, her hand landing on his shoulder for balance, and somehow that made everything worse and better at the same time. "Oh God, I'm not usually this. I promise I'm a functioning adult." She finally got her feet under her and stood, and Daniel immediately felt the absence of her warmth like a physical loss, which was insane. He'd known this woman for exactly 30 seconds, half of which she'd spent sitting on him. "Really, it's fine," he said, standing too because it seemed wrong to remain seated when she was so clearly flustered. "No harm done. Your coffee, though." They both looked down at the same time. Her cup had indeed fallen, creating a beige puddle that was slowly spreading across the floor toward his book. "Oh no!" She dove for the Steinbeck, grabbing it just before the coffee reached it. Their hands collided on the cover. "Is this a first edition? Please tell me I didn't just destroy a first edition." "You didn't," Daniel said, taking the book from her gently. Their fingers brushed. "You saved it, actually." She laughed, and it was nothing like he expected. Not polished or controlled, but genuine and slightly wild, the kind of laugh that suggested she was as surprised by it as he was. "Well, at least I did something right in the last 60 seconds. A barista appeared with a mop and a handful of napkins, eyeing them with the weary expression of someone who'd seen every possible cafe disaster. "You folks okay?" "Yes, fine. I'm so sorry about the mess." The woman was already reaching for her purse, pulling out bills. "Here, for the trouble, and another coffee for—" She paused, looking at Daniel properly for the first time. "I spilled your coffee too, didn't I?" "It was already cold," Daniel said. "That's not really the point." She handed money to the barista. "2 coffees, please. Whatever he was having, and I'll take an Americano, extra shot." "You don't have to—" "I absolutely do. I just sat on a complete stranger in the middle of a cafe. The least I can do is buy him a coffee." She was gathering her things now, her laptop, her phones, her coat, all while somehow maintaining eye contact with him in a way that made Daniel's pulse quicken. "I really am sorry. I've been up since 4. I'm running on no sleep and bad decisions, and apparently I've lost all spatial awareness." "Bad decisions?" Daniel asked, then immediately wondered why he'd asked, why he was prolonging this conversation instead of letting her escape with whatever dignity remained. She paused in her gathering, something shifting in her expression. For just a second, he saw past the embarrassment and exhaustion to something else, something that looked like loneliness wearing a very expensive suit. The kind where you take every meeting, accept every project, say yes to everything until you forget what you were saying yes to in the first place. She hitched her laptop bag higher on her shoulder. The kind where you end up sitting on strangers because you're so focused on everything except where you are. 2 coffees, the barista announced, appearing beside them with cups that definitely hadn't taken long enough to brew properly, but neither of them commented on it. The woman took both cups, handed one to Daniel. Their fingers brushed again. He was starting to think the universe was doing this on purpose. "Thank you," he said. "You really didn't have to." "I really did." She smiled, and it transformed her whole face, made her look younger and older at the same time, like she was remembering what smiling felt like. "I'm Victoria, by the way. Victoria Hale. And before you ask—" "Yes." I'm always this graceful. Daniel Brooks. He found himself smiling back, which felt strange. He couldn't remember the last time he'd smiled at someone who wasn't Ellie, and I don't believe that for a second. Smart man. Victoria checked one of her phones, and he watched the warmth in her expression flicker and dim, replaced by that professional mask. I have a call in 3 minutes that I absolutely cannot miss, but, she hesitated, and in that hesitation, Daniel saw something he recognized, the war between what you wanted and what you allowed yourself to want. This cafe, do you come here often? God, that sounded like a terrible pickup line. I just meant Wednesdays, Daniel heard himself say. Same time, same spot, every week. Wednesdays, Victoria repeated like she was filing it away. Good to know. Just in case I need to practice my sitting on strangers technique. Clearly needs work. She was backing away now, back toward her original table where her laptop bag still sat. But her eyes stayed on him, and there was something in them that made Daniel's chest tight. It was nice sitting on you, she said, then immediately went crimson. I mean, meeting you. It was nice meeting you. I'm going to stop talking now and go sit over there and try to remember how to be a person. Good luck with your call, Daniel said. Good luck with your book. She turned away, and Daniel watched her go, watched her settle at her table, open her laptop, transform back into the woman who'd first walked in, all business and barriers. But when she glanced back at him, just once, just for a second, those barriers weren't quite as solid as before. Daniel sat down in his chair, the one with the ripped armrest, and opened his Steinbeck. The words blurred on the page. He could still feel the phantom warmth where she'd been sitting, could still smell that hint of rain in her perfume, could still hear that unexpected laugh. Wednesday, he thought. She'd asked about Wednesdays. His phone buzzed, another text from the school. Also reminder, parent-teacher conferences next week. Please confirm your slot. Reality, crashing back in like it always did. He had exactly 45 minutes left before pickup. 45 minutes before the bookstore and dinner and homework and bedtime stories and the 1,000 small tasks that filled his life so completely there was no room for anything else. No room for women who stumbled into your life smelling like rain. No room for whatever this was. Daniel forced himself to focus on the book, got through maybe a page before his eyes drifted back to Victoria. She was on her call now, her expression serious, nodding at something the person on the other end was saying. Professional. Controlled. Completely different from the woman who'd laughed at her own disaster. Which one was real? Maybe both, maybe neither. Maybe it didn't matter because this was just a random encounter in a cafe, the kind of thing that would make a good story later. You won't believe what happened to me today. But wouldn't actually change anything. Except his coffee was still warm in his hands, paid for by a stranger. Except he could still feel where she'd touched his shoulder. Except he was already wondering if next Wednesday would bring rain. Much. The bookstore was quieter than usual when Daniel returned, which meant it was essentially dead. 3 customers in 4 hours, 2 of them just browsing, 1 actually buying, a paperback romance that cost $8.99 and gave Daniel exactly $3.15 in profit after costs. Not enough. Never enough. Daddy! But then Ellie burst through the door, all wild curls and gap-toothed grin, her backpack nearly as big as she was, and none of the numbers mattered. Not the loan payment, or the declining sales, or the fact that they'd eaten spaghetti 4 nights this week, because it was cheap and Ellie actually liked it. Hey, Bug. Daniel swept her up despite the fact that she was getting too big for it, despite the warning twinge in his lower back. How was school? We learned about butterflies and how they start as caterpillars, but then they get in a cocoon and turn into goo, and somehow that goo knows how to rearrange itself into something completely different. And Miss Peterson said that's called metamorphosis, and I think that's the coolest word I've ever heard. Can I have a snack? She said it all in one breath the way she always did, and Daniel laughed because he couldn't help it. Ellie made everything feel possible, even on the days when the evidence suggested otherwise. Metamorphosis is a pretty cool word, he agreed, setting her down. Apple or crackers? Both? Pushing it, Bug. Both, she said again, grinning because she knew she'd win. She always won. They had their snack in the small back office that doubled as a break room, storage space, and occasionally Ellie's homework station. She chattered about butterflies and her best friend Emma, who'd gotten in trouble for talking during quiet time, and the book fair tomorrow, which was apparently the most important event in the history of the world. "Can we get books?" Ellie asked, apple slice pausing halfway to her mouth. "At the book fair, can we?" Daniel looked at his daughter, at the hope shining in her eyes, and felt the familiar weight settle in his chest. How did you explain to an 8-year-old that her father owned a bookstore but couldn't afford to buy her books? How did you make that make sense? "We'll see, Bug. Maybe 1 or 2, okay?" "Okay." She was satisfied with that because she was 8, and she still believed that "we'll see" meant yes. Daniel hoped she could hold on to that belief a little longer. The afternoon crawled by. 2 more customers, 1 sale, a cookbook that had been on the shelf for 8 months. Ellie did her homework at the counter, occasionally reading passages aloud to get his opinion, and Daniel tried not to calculate how many cookbooks he'd need to sell to make rent. At 5:30, Mrs. Chen from the gift shop next door poked her head in. "Daniel, honey, you got a minute?" She was 72 and treated him like a wayward son, which would have been annoying if it wasn't also kind of nice. Daniel nodded, asked Ellie to watch the register. She loved that, loved being trusted with something important, and followed Mrs. Chen outside. "My nephew asked me to ask you again," she said without preamble. "About the building. He's willing to go to $800,000 now." Daniel's stomach dropped. $800,000. Enough to pay off every debt, start over, maybe even give Ellie the kind of life where book fairs weren't budget crises. "I can't, Mrs. Chen. This store is eating you alive," she interrupted gently. "I see you, Daniel. Every day. Watching the customers not come, watching the bills pile up. I know what happened with your wife. Ex-wife. Ex-wife," she corrected softly. "I know she left you with all this, but sweetheart, there's no shame in letting go. Sometimes holding on does more damage than walking away." Daniel looked through the window at Ellie, bent over her math homework, completely absorbed. "It's not just a store, it's all I have left of before everything fell apart. If I sell it, then it's like admitting that she was right, that I couldn't make this work, that you're what? Human? That you tried something and it didn't work out the way you planned?" Mrs. Chen touched his arm. "That girl in there, she's what you have left of before, and she needs a father who isn't buried under impossible dreams." "I'll think about it," Daniel said, which they both knew meant no. Mrs. Chen sighed but didn't push. "The offer stands. You know where to find me." That night, after Ellie was in bed, after dinner and bath time and 2 stories and 3 glasses of water and 1 more hug, Daniel sat in his living room and did the math he'd been avoiding. The loan payment was due in 8 days. He had half of it. Half? Maybe. The utilities were 2 weeks past due. His car needed inspection and probably new tires. Ellie needed new shoes. Her toes were pressing against the front of her current ones. And somewhere in the city, Victoria Hale was probably in a corner office, making decisions that moved millions of dollars, living a life so far removed from his that their encounter this afternoon might as well have happened in different dimensions. Daniel opened his laptop, pulled up the bookstore's accounts, stared at the numbers that never changed no matter how many times he looked at them, opened a new tab and typed Victoria Hale before he could stop himself. The results flooded in. Victoria Hale, VP of Product Development at Helix Technologies. Victoria Hale speaks at Tech Summit 2023. Victoria Hale named to Forbes' 40 Under 40 list. Picture after picture of her in professional settings, always composed, always confident, always belonging to a world Daniel had left behind. He closed the laptop. What was he doing? She'd accidentally sat on him. She'd bought him a coffee. That was it. That was the whole story. There was no reason to think about her, or wonder about her, or imagine what next Wednesday might bring. Except he did wonder. Wondered what kind of bad decisions kept her up since 4 a.m. Wondered what put that flash of loneliness in her eyes. Wondered if she was thinking about him at all, or if he'd already been filed away as an embarrassing anecdote in her very busy, very important life. His phone buzzed. Email from the bank. Subject line, payment reminder. Daniel deleted it without reading and went to bed. Wednesday came too slowly and too quickly at the same time. Daniel told himself he wasn't going to the cafe because of Victoria. He went every Wednesday. It was routine. The fact that he spent an extra 5 minutes in the bathroom making sure his hair looked decent meant nothing. The fact that he wore his good jeans instead of the ones with the paint stain meant nothing. "You look nice, Daddy," Ellie said as he dropped her off at her program. "Are you going on a date?" "What? No, I'm going to the cafe, like always. Is there a pretty lady at the cafe?" 8-year-olds, Daniel decided, were far too perceptive for anyone's good. "There are lots of ladies at the cafe, Bug, and men, and probably some people who are neither. It's a cafe. There are people." Ellie giggled. "You're being weird. You're being nosy. Ms. Peterson says curiosity is how we learn." Miss Peterson clearly doesn't have an 8-year-old daughter. But he kissed her goodbye with a smile, and she ran off to join Emma, and Daniel drove to the cafe with his heart doing something stupid in his chest. She wouldn't be there. Why would she be there? She was probably in back-to-back meetings or traveling for business, or any of the 1,000 other things that filled the life of a Forbes 40 under 40 executive. Coming back to a cafe where she'd had an embarrassing accident made no sense. The cafe was moderately crowded, normal Wednesday afternoon level. Daniel scanned the room before he could stop himself, looking for dark hair and expensive clothes and eyes that held secrets. Nothing. He felt the disappointment like a weight, and immediately felt stupid for feeling it at all. He claimed his usual chair, the chair Victoria had fallen toward, he couldn't help thinking, and pulled out his book. Different book today. Less Steinbeck, more Vonnegut. He needed something wryly funny to match his mood. The minutes ticked by. Daniel read the same page 4 times without absorbing a word. He was being ridiculous. This was ridiculous. He should just go, leave early, pick up Ellie, and, "Is this seat taken?" His head snapped up so fast he almost gave himself whiplash. Victoria stood beside the table, coffee already in hand, wearing dark slacks and a cream-colored blouse that probably cost more than Daniel's monthly grocery budget. But her hair was down today, falling just past her shoulders, and she looked less exhausted than before. No, Daniel managed. Yes. It's not taken. You can, yes. Smooth, Brooks. Real smooth. Victoria's mouth twitched into a smile as she sat down. Not at his table, at the small table beside him, the same one from last week. Close enough to talk, far enough to maintain plausible deniability that this was anything more than 2 strangers sharing space in a crowded cafe. "I promise not to fall on you this time," she said. "I'll try not to look too disappointed." The words were out before Daniel could stop them, and for a moment, Victoria just stared at him. Then she laughed, that same genuine, slightly wild laugh from before, and something in Daniel's chest loosened. "Was that flirting?" she asked. "I'm genuinely asking. I've been in so many meetings this week I've lost all ability to distinguish normal human interaction from corporate doublespeak." "Maybe a little," Daniel admitted. "I'm out of practice." "Me too." Victoria took a sip of her coffee, and Daniel noticed her hand wasn't quite steady. Nerves? Was she nervous? "I wasn't sure you'd be here. I come every Wednesday." "I know, you said." She paused. "I wasn't sure I'd come. I had a meeting scheduled for this exact time. I moved it." The words hung between them, their weight impossible to ignore. She'd moved a meeting. For this. For the possibility of him. "Why?" Daniel asked. Victoria looked at him, really looked at him, and Daniel saw that same war in her eyes. Want versus permission to want. "Honestly, I'm not sure. Last week when I was sitting on you..." She stopped, closed her eyes. "That will never stop being mortifying, will it?" "Probably not." "Great." But she was smiling. "When that happened, when we were talking after, I felt something I haven't felt in a really long time." "What?" "Present," she said simply. "Like I was actually here, in that moment, instead of 3 steps ahead thinking about the next thing and the thing after that. You made me feel present, Daniel Brooks, and I didn't realize how much I missed that until I was back in my office, drowning in quarterly projections, wondering why I felt so empty." Daniel didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to tell her that he understood exactly what she meant, that he lived his entire life 3 steps ahead, planning meals and managing schedules and calculating costs. That presence was a luxury he couldn't afford. Except right now. Right now, sitting across from Victoria Hale in a crowded cafe on a Wednesday afternoon, he felt exactly where he was. "I'm just a guy who owns a failing bookstore," he said quietly. "I'm not sure I'm qualified to make anyone feel anything except maybe worried about my financial planning." "Failing?" Victoria's expression shifted. "The bookstore, that's yours?" "Brooks Books, 2 blocks from here. You've probably never noticed it. Most people don't anymore." "Why is it failing?" Daniel laughed, but there was no humor in it. "How much time do you have?" "Because I could give you a detailed breakdown of every mistake I've made in the last 3 years, starting with believing my ex-wife when she said she wanted to build this together, and ending with this morning when I realized I'm probably going to have to sell just to keep my daughter in shoes." He stopped, horrified. Why was he telling her this? He didn't talk about this with anyone, not even Mrs. Chen, and here he was spilling his failures to a woman he barely knew. But Victoria wasn't looking at him with pity. She was looking at him with something that might have been recognition. "My company is launching a new platform next month," she said. "It's going to revolutionize the industry. That's what I told my board, my investors, my team. But the truth? I'm not sure I believe in it anymore. I'm not sure I believe in any of it. I've spent 15 years building a career, and last week I realized I can't remember the last time I did something because I wanted to instead of because it was strategic." "Why do you keep doing it?" "Because I'm good at it. Because people depend on me. Because—" She trailed off, then shook her head. "Because I don't know how to do anything else. My whole life has been about control, controlling outcomes, controlling perceptions, controlling every variable until nothing can surprise me. And then last week I fell on a stranger in a cafe, and for just a moment I wasn't in control at all. And it was terrifying. But it was also—" "What?" "Real," Victoria finished. "It was real in a way nothing in my life has been for a very long time." They sat in silence for a moment, the cafe noise washing over them. Daniel watched Victoria's fingers trace patterns on her coffee cup and wondered how someone so successful could look so lost. "Can I ask you something?" he said finally. "Anything. What's the last thing you did just because you wanted to?" Victoria opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I moved a meeting to come to this cafe to see if you'd be here." Before that, she thought about it, really thought about it, and Daniel watched something like panic cross her face. "I don't remember," she whispered. They talked for an hour, then another. Daniel completely forgot about his usual 90-minute limit, forgot about pickup time, forgot about everything except the woman sitting across from him, slowly dismantling every wall she'd built. She told him about her childhood, only child, parents who measured success in achievements, a life structured around excellence. About college where she'd studied engineering because she was good at it, not because she loved it. About her first job, her second, the steady climb up a ladder she'd never questioned until recently. "When did you start questioning it?" Daniel asked. "My 35th birthday, 2 months ago." Victoria smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I was in Shanghai for a conference, alone in a hotel room at midnight, eating room service sushi and reviewing presentations, and I thought, this is it. This is what I've been working toward. And if this is it, then what was the point?" Daniel understood. God, did he understand. "My ex-wife left 3 years ago," he heard himself say. "We'd been married for 6 years, together for 8. She wanted the bookstore to be this grand vision, artisanal coffee bar, rare books, literary events. I wanted it to be a place where people could find themselves in stories. We were building different dreams in the same space, and neither of us noticed until it was too late." What happened? She met someone else. Someone with a real career, she said. Someone with ambition. Someone who wasn't content running a failing business in a dying industry. Daniel took a breath. She left 2 weeks before Ellie's 5th birthday. Didn't even fight for custody, just walked away. Victoria reached across the space between their tables and took his hand. Just took it, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I'm sorry, she said. Me too. He looked at their joined hands, marveling at how right it felt. The worst part? She wasn't wrong. The store is failing. I am stuck, and maybe I am content with too little. But it's my too little, you know? I chose it. Or I thought I did. Did you? The question hit him harder than it should have. I don't know anymore. Maybe I just chose the opposite of what she wanted out of spite. Maybe I'm failing on purpose to prove something. God, I sound insane. You sound human. Victoria's thumb brushed across his knuckles, and Daniel felt the touch everywhere. You sound like someone who got hurt and built walls to keep it from happening again, which, speaking from experience, is an exhausting way to live. Is that what you're doing? Building walls? Every day? Every meeting? Every decision? Every carefully controlled interaction? I've built a fortress, Daniel, and I'm very safe inside it, and very, very alone. Daniel's phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again. Victoria gently pulled her hand back. You should check that. He did. 3 texts from the after-school program director. Hi, Daniel. Just checking. You're running a bit late for pickup. Ellie's doing fine, playing with Emma. No rush. Actually, we do close at 5:30, so if you could… Shit! Daniel was already standing, already gathering his things. I'm so sorry, I have to… My daughter, I completely lost track. Go, Victoria said, standing too. It's fine, go get your daughter. But Daniel hesitated, because this felt unfinished, because he didn't want to leave, because Victoria was looking at him with an expression that suggested she didn't want him to leave either. Next Wednesday? He asked. I'll move my meetings, she said immediately. Daniel smiled, started to leave, then turned back. Victoria? That thing you did, coming here today? That was something you wanted, not something strategic, just in case you needed to remember you're capable of it. He left before he could see her reaction, but he felt it anyway. Felt it in the way his chest lightened on the drive to pick up Ellie, felt it in the smile he couldn't quite suppress. Daddy, you're happy, Ellie observed as she buckled her seatbelt. Did something good happen? Maybe, Daniel admitted. Maybe it did. Was there a pretty lady? Daniel laughed. Yeah, Bug. There was a pretty lady. I knew it! Ellie bounced in her seat. Ms. Peterson says when grown-ups are happy, it's usually because of love or ice cream. Can we get ice cream? It's not love. I barely know her. But it could be love eventually. Could it? Daniel thought about Victoria's hand in his, about the way she'd looked when she said she was alone, about the fact that she'd moved meetings just for the possibility of seeing him again. Maybe, he said. Stranger things have happened. Like butterfly metamorphosis. Exactly like that. They got ice cream. Daniel couldn't really afford it, but Ellie's joy was worth every penny of debt. And later that night, after bedtime stories and tucking in, he sat in his living room and didn't open his laptop to look at the failing numbers. Instead, he thought about Wednesday. And for the first time in 3 years, the future felt like something other than a burden to survive. It felt like a possibility. The following Wednesday arrived, wrapped in unseasonable rain, the kind that turned Seattle's streets into rivers and made the cafe windows fog with condensation. Daniel almost didn't go. Ellie had woken up with a slight fever, nothing serious, just enough to keep her home from school, and leaving her with Mrs. Chen felt wrong, even though the older woman had insisted. She's watching cartoons and eating crackers, Mrs. Chen had said, practically pushing him out the door. She's fine. You, on the other hand, look like a man who needs to see someone. Go. I've raised 4 children. I think I can handle one 8-year-old for 90 minutes. So Daniel went, feeling guilty and hopeful in equal measure, his coat soaked through before he'd made it halfway down the block. The cafe was less crowded today, the rain keeping people away, and his usual corner felt emptier than normal. Victoria wasn't there. Of course she wasn't. Why would she brave this weather for something that wasn't even really a thing? Just 2 people who'd talked a few times, just a connection that probably meant more to him than it did to her. She had a real life, a real career. She probably hadn't thought about him at all in the past week, while he'd thought about almost nothing else. Daniel ordered his coffee and sat down, pulling out his book without really seeing it. The rain hammered against the windows. Someone's phone rang and went to voicemail. The espresso machine hissed. Normal cafe sounds that felt wrong today, hollow. He gave her 30 minutes, then 45. At an hour, he started gathering his things, feeling foolish and disappointed and angry at himself for feeling either. This was exactly why he didn't do this, didn't let people in, didn't hope for things that... The door burst open, bringing with it a gust of wind and rain, and Victoria. She was completely soaked. Her hair hung in dark ropes around her face, her expensive coat dripping onto the floor, her shoes making squelching sounds with each step. She looked like she'd walked through the storm instead of around it. She looked beautiful. "I'm sorry," she gasped, scanning the cafe until her eyes found his. "I'm so sorry. I got stuck in back-to-back calls that ran over, and then I couldn't find a cab, and I thought about just going back to the office, but I..." She stopped, seeming to realize she was shouting across a quiet cafe. She crossed to him in 4 quick strides. "You're still here." "I'm still here," Daniel confirmed, standing because it felt necessary, because she was dripping all over the floor and shivering, and he wanted to... What? Wrap her in something warm? Dry her hair? Pull her close? "I thought you might have left," Victoria said, and there was something vulnerable in her voice that made Daniel's chest ache. "I thought I'd ruined this before it even started." "What is this?" Daniel asked quietly. Victoria looked at him, water dripping from her hair onto her nose, her mascara slightly smudged, her carefully controlled appearance completely undone by the rain. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I walked 20 blocks in a thunderstorm because the thought of missing you made me feel sick. So it's something." The barista appeared with a handful of towels, eyeing Victoria with concern. "You want some coffee, hot chocolate, maybe some dry clothes we don't have?" Victoria laughed, accepted the towels. "Coffee would be amazing, thank you." She tried to dry herself off, but it was mostly futile. Her coat was beyond saving. Daniel found himself reaching out, taking one of the towels, gently wiping the water from her face before he could think better of it. She went very still, her eyes locked on his. "You walked 20 blocks, he said. "I'm aware. My feet are filing a formal complaint. In this rain. I've made worse decisions. Remember the sitting on you incident? That's going to be a thing now, isn't it? Every time we see each other, we're going to reference the sitting incident. Until something more embarrassing happens, yes." Victoria smiled, but it was shaky. She was shaking. "Can we sit? I think my legs are staging a rebellion." They sat, and Daniel draped his own dry jacket over her shoulders without asking. She pulled it tighter around herself, and he tried not to think about how right she looked wearing something of his. "You have a daughter," Victoria said suddenly. Daniel blinked at the shift. "Yes. Ellie. She's 8. You mentioned her last week. I've been thinking about that. About what it means that you're a father." Victoria wrapped her hands around her coffee cup when it arrived, like she was trying to absorb its warmth. "I don't have kids. Never wanted them. My career didn't leave room for that kind of complexity. But you reorganized your entire life around another person. That's incredible. Or stupid, depending on who you ask." "It's brave," Victoria said firmly. "It's the opposite of what I did. I eliminated every variable that might require me to be vulnerable. You embraced it." Daniel thought about Ellie at home with Mrs. Chen, probably milking her slight fever for extra cartoon time. "I didn't have a choice. Her mother left. It was either step up or let Ellie down, and that was never an option." "You still chose it. You could have sent her to boarding school or hired a full-time nanny or any number of things that would have let you keep your distance." Victoria paused. "Can I meet her?" The question caught Daniel completely off guard. "What?" "Your daughter. Can I meet her? Unless that's too weird. It's probably too weird. Forget I asked." "No, I just..." "Why?" Victoria looked down at her coffee. "Because people are the sum of what they love, and you love her. And I want to understand all of you, not just the version that shows up to cafes on Wednesdays." She glanced up. "Too much?" "Maybe a little," Daniel admitted. "But not in a bad way, just unexpected. We've known each other for 2 weeks. Technically 3, if you count the sitting incident as week 0. I don't think that's how counting works. I'm an engineer, I'll count however I want." But Victoria's smile was uncertain. "I'm pushing, I'm sorry. I told you I've lost all ability to do normal human interaction. In meetings, you push for what you want. You don't wait for permission. But this isn't a meeting, and you're not a quarterly projection, and I need to remember that. Daniel reached across the table, took her hand like she'd taken his the week before. Her fingers were still cold from the rain. You're not pushing. You're just direct. I appreciate that. It's better than the games people usually play. What games? The ones where you pretend you don't want what you want, where you act like nothing matters so you can't be hurt when it doesn't work out. He squeezed her hand gently. I spent 3 years playing those games with myself. Pretending the bookstore didn't matter, pretending I didn't care that it was failing, pretending I chose this instead of just defaulting into it. I'm tired of pretending. So what do you want? Victoria asked. Really want, no pretending. Daniel looked at her, soaking wet, mascara smudged, shivering in his jacket, more real than anyone he'd encountered in years, and told her the truth. I want you to meet my daughter. I want to see you somewhere that isn't this cafe. I want to know what you're like when you're not in work mode. I want... He paused, gathering courage. I want to see where this goes, whatever this is. Victoria's breath caught. I want that too. But Daniel, you need to know, I'm terrible at this. At being vulnerable, at letting people in. I will probably mess this up in spectacular fashion. Good thing I'm an expert in spectacular failures. We're quite a pair. We really are. They sat there, hands linked across the table, rain streaming down the windows, and Daniel felt something shift. Not the ground beneath him, but something internal, some locked door he'd kept shut for 3 years, creaking open just enough to let light through. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again. Your daughter? Victoria guessed. Daniel checked. Mrs. Chen. Fever's down. She's asking about the pretty lady. Should I be worried? He showed Victoria the text. She laughed, color rising in her cheeks. I'm the pretty lady? Apparently Ellie has decided I'm incapable of being happy without romantic intervention. She's been interrogating me about you all week. Smart kid. Too smart. It's terrifying. Victoria bit her lip, then said, I'm free this Saturday. If the offer still stands, to meet her. Daniel's heart did something complicated. It stands. But fair warning, she has approximately 0 filter and will definitely ask why you sat on me. I look forward to being mortified in front of an 8-year-old. It'll be a new experience. Somehow I doubt that. They made plans. The bookstore, Saturday afternoon. Casual, low pressure. Just a visit, just meeting, just seeing. Daniel tried not to think about how much weight he was putting on those words, how much he wanted this to work. When they finally left the cafe, the rain reduced to a drizzle, the afternoon fading into evening, Victoria returned his jacket reluctantly. Keep it, Daniel said. You're still soaked. I can't take your jacket. It's a loan. You can return it Saturday. Victoria smiled, pulled the jacket back on. It was too big for her, hanging past her hands. She looked young in it, less like a Forbes executive and more like someone who might believe in possibilities. Saturday, she confirmed. Saturday. She left in the cab she'd finally flagged down, and Daniel walked back to Mrs. Chen's in the rain, not even caring that he was getting drenched. His phone buzzed with a text from a number he hadn't saved yet, but recognized anyway. Thank you for waiting, for not leaving. I'm not used to people who stay. Daniel texted back, I'm not going anywhere. He meant it. Saturday arrived bright and clear as if the universe was apologizing for Wednesday's storm. Daniel spent the morning in a state of controlled panic, cleaning the bookstore with an intensity that made Ellie suspicious. Why are you vacuuming? She demanded from her perch on the counter. You never vacuum. I vacuum sometimes. Name one time. I'm naming it right now. This time. This is the time I'm vacuuming. Ellie crossed her arms, giving him a look that was far too knowing for 8. Is this about the pretty lady? Daniel stopped vacuuming. How do you know about that? Mrs. Chen told me. She said you've been smiling weird and forgetting things, and that means you like someone. Ellie's eyes went wide. Is she coming here? Is the pretty lady coming to our store? Her name is Victoria, and yes, she's coming to visit this afternoon. But Ellie, listen. Daniel sat down beside her. This doesn't mean anything big, okay? We're just friends. She's just visiting. Do friends make you smile weird? Sometimes. Do friends make you vacuum? Ellie. Because Ms. Peterson says when someone changes their behavior, it means something important is happening. We learned that in science when we studied animal courtship rituals. Daniel put his head in his hands. We are not discussing courtship rituals. But Daddy, no, absolutely not. We are having a normal afternoon with a nice person who is visiting our bookstore. That's it. Okay, Ellie said, in the tone that meant she absolutely did not believe him, but was willing to play along. Victoria arrived at 2, and Daniel's heart stopped when he saw her through the window. She dressed down, jeans, a soft green sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She carried a bag he couldn't identify and looked nervous in a way that made him feel less alone in his own nerves. The bell above the door chimed as she entered. "Hi," she said. "Hi," Daniel replied. They stared at each other for a beat too long, and then Ellie was there, appearing between them like a small tornado of curiosity. "You're the pretty lady," Victoria blinked. Yes, I'm Victoria. I'm Ellie. Did you really sit on my dad in a cafe?" "Oh my God," Daniel muttered, but Victoria was laughing, crouching down to Ellie's level. "I really did. It was very embarrassing. I wasn't watching where I was going and I fell right on him." "That's so funny," Ellie giggled. "Was he soft?" "Ellie! What? I'm just asking." Victoria grinned up at Daniel, eyes sparkling with mischief. "He was surprisingly comfortable, actually." "I hate both of you," Daniel said, but he was smiling. Ellie grabbed Victoria's hand, just grabbed it, the way she did with people she'd decided to trust, and started pulling her deeper into the store. "Come on, I'll show you my favorite section. Do you like books? Obviously you like books if you're here. What kind of books do you like? Do you like butterflies? We're learning about butterflies in school, and they're so cool because they start as caterpillars and then—" "Ellie, breathe," Daniel interjected gently. But Victoria was following, letting herself be led, and the look on her face was something Daniel had never seen before. Soft and open and almost wondering. Like she'd never considered that being around a child could be anything other than obligation. "I love butterflies," Victoria was saying. "Did you know some species migrate thousands of miles? Monarch butterflies travel from Canada to Mexico every year." "Really? That's so far. Do they get tired?" "Probably, but they keep going anyway." Ellie dragged Victoria to the children's section, which Daniel kept in the back corner, where afternoon light fell in golden squares across the worn carpet. It was his favorite part of the store, the part that still felt magical, the part his ex-wife had wanted to minimize in favor of rare first editions that never sold. Victoria settled on the floor without hesitation, and Ellie immediately began pulling books from the shelves, explaining each one with the kind of passion only children possessed. And Victoria listened, really listened, asking questions, making observations, treating Ellie's thoughts like they mattered. Daniel watched from the doorway, something warm and terrifying blooming in his chest. "Your dad owns all these books?" Victoria was asking. "Yep. Well, he owns the store, so technically yes, but he says books aren't really owned. They're just borrowed for a while until we pass them to someone else." "That's a beautiful way to think about it." "That's what I said. But Emma thinks it's weird. She says if you buy something, you own it forever." Emma sounds very certain about things. "She is. I like that about her, but sometimes I think she's wrong." Ellie pulled out a worn copy of Charlotte's Web. "Like this book. My dad read it to me when I was little, and his dad read it to him when he was little. So who really owns it? All of us, kind of. And also none of us." Victoria glanced at Daniel, and the emotion in her eyes made his breath catch. "You're a very smart girl, Ellie." "I know," Ellie said matter-of-factly. "My dad says being smart is good, but being kind is better. So I try to be both." "I think you're succeeding." Ellie beamed, then suddenly remembered the bag Victoria had brought. "What's in there?" "Oh, I almost forgot." Victoria reached for the bag, pulled out a large book. "Your dad mentioned you like butterflies, so I brought you something." She handed Ellie a gorgeous illustrated guide to butterfly species, the kind of book that cost easily $70 or $80. Ellie's eyes went huge. "This is for me?" "If you want it. I saw it and thought of you." "But you don't even know me." "Not yet." but I'd like to. Ellie threw her arms around Victoria's neck without warning, without hesitation, and Daniel watched Victoria freeze for just a second before her arms came up to hug Ellie back. When she looked at Daniel over Ellie's shoulder, there were tears in her eyes. "Thank you," Ellie whispered. "This is the best present ever." "You're welcome, sweetheart." They spent the next hour exploring the bookstore together. Victoria asked about Daniel's inventory, his organization system, his vision for the space. She didn't offer advice or solutions, just listened and asked questions that showed she was really thinking about what he said. "Why did you choose books?" she asked at one point, while Ellie was engrossed in her new butterfly guide. Daniel ran his hand along a shelf of poetry. "Because books saved me. When I was a kid, I was angry all the time. My parents fought constantly, and I had no control over anything. But in books, I could escape. I could be someone else, somewhere else. I could understand things that made no sense in my real life." He paused. "I wanted to give that to other people, a place to escape, to find themselves, to feel less alone." "And did you? Give that to people?" "I thought I did. For a while. But then," he gestured vaguely at the empty store, "the world changed. People buy books online now. They want convenience, not community. And maybe I'm just stubborn, holding on to something that doesn't make sense anymore." Victoria moved closer, her voice soft. "Or maybe the world needs what you're offering more than ever. Maybe connection and community matter more now, not less, because everything else is so disconnected." "That's a nice thought." "It's not just a thought, it's—" She stopped herself, shook her head. "Sorry. I'm doing the thing where I try to solve problems instead of just being present with them." "Is that what you do? At work?" "It's what I've trained myself to do everywhere. See a problem, fix it. Don't sit with discomfort. Don't let things be uncertain." Victoria smiled sadly. "It's made me very successful and very lonely." "What if you didn't have to fix this?" Daniel asked. "What if you just were here?" "I'm not sure I know how." "Then maybe we figure it out together." Before Victoria could respond, Ellie appeared between them, butterfly book clutched to her chest. "Can Victoria stay for dinner, please? We're having spaghetti, and it's really good, and I want to show her my butterfly drawings at home." Daniel looked at Victoria. "You don't have to—" "I'd love to," Victoria said immediately. Then more carefully, "If that's okay with you." It was more than okay. It was exactly what Daniel wanted and exactly what terrified him, all wrapped up in one simple dinner invitation. "Spaghetti it is," he said. Their apartment above the bookstore was small and cluttered, and nothing like the pristine spaces Victoria probably lived in. Daniel felt self-conscious as he unlocked the door, seeing it through her eyes, the worn furniture, the crayon drawings taped to the walls, the pile of laundry he'd meant to fold yesterday. But Victoria walked in like she belonged there, slipping off her shoes without being asked, complimenting Ellie's artwork, settling at their small kitchen table while Ellie showed her the butterfly drawings with an enthusiasm that couldn't be faked. Daniel cooked, listening to their conversation, and felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Home. Not the place, but the feeling. The sense of being exactly where he was supposed to be, with exactly who he was supposed to be with. "Your dad's a good cook," Victoria observed as Daniel set plates in front of them. "He makes the best spaghetti in the whole world," Ellie declared. "Better than anyone's. I asked everyone in my class and nobody's dad makes spaghetti as good as mine. That's quite a claim." "It's science. I took a survey." Victoria took a bite and her eyes widened. "Okay, you're right. This is incredible. What's in this sauce?" "Family secret," Daniel said. "It's just regular sauce from a jar with extra garlic and some spices," Ellie announced. "He says it's a secret, but I know because I help sometimes." "Ellie!" "What?" "Lying is wrong. You said so." Victoria laughed so hard she nearly choked on her spaghetti, and the sound filled their small kitchen with something that felt like joy. After dinner, after Ellie had extracted a promise that Victoria would come back soon, after the dishes were done and Ellie was in bed, Daniel and Victoria sat on the small balcony off the living room. The city spread below them, lights twinkling in the darkness. "She's amazing," Victoria said quietly. "Your daughter, she's everything I didn't know I was missing." She likes you too. She doesn't usually warm up to people that fast. Maybe she knows something we're still figuring out. Daniel looked at Victoria in the dim light. What are we figuring out? Whether this is real. Whether it's possible. Victoria wrapped her arms around herself. I told you I'm terrible at vulnerability. But sitting here in your home after meeting your daughter, I feel something I haven't let myself feel in 15 years. What? Hope, she whispered. Hope that maybe there's more to life than quarterly reports and strategic planning. Hope that maybe I can be someone other than the person I've spent my whole life becoming. She turned to him. You scare me, Daniel Brooks, because you make me want things I don't know how to want. Daniel reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. You scare me too, because you're everything I told myself I couldn't have. You're successful and brilliant, and you have your life together, and I'm just what? A devoted father? A man with dreams and principles? Someone who builds community instead of corporations? Victoria caught his hand, held it against her cheek. You're not just anything, Daniel. You're everything I've been missing without knowing it. They sat like that, the city humming below them, two people from different worlds discovering they wanted the same thing, to be seen, to be understood, to be enough exactly as they were. I should go, Victoria said eventually, but she didn't move. You should, Daniel agreed, but he didn't let go of her hand. I have an early meeting. You always have early meetings. This one's important. They're all important. Victoria smiled. Are you trying to convince me to stay or to leave? I'm trying to let you decide what you want instead of what you think you should want. She kissed him then, soft and tentative and terrifying. Just a brush of lips that lasted maybe 3 seconds but felt like falling and flying at the same time. When she pulled back, her eyes were wide. I wanted that. For the record. Not because I should, but because I wanted to. Good, Daniel managed, his heart thundering. That's good. I'm coming back tomorrow and the day after. And the day after that, if you'll let me. I'll let you. Even though I'll probably mess this up? Especially then. Victoria left with his jacket again. She kept forgetting to return it, or maybe she wasn't forgetting at all. And Daniel stood on his balcony watching her cab disappear into the city, feeling like his life had just shifted on its axis in a way that couldn't be undone. Inside, he found Ellie's door cracked open. She was supposed to be asleep, but was clearly wide awake. I like her, Daddy, she whispered. I like her too, Bug. Is she going to be your girlfriend? I don't know, maybe. Would that be okay? Ellie was quiet for a moment. Is she going to leave like Mommy did? The question hit Daniel in the chest. He went to Ellie's bed, sat on the edge. I don't know, sweetheart. I can't promise she won't. People are complicated and sometimes things don't work out even when we want them to. But you're going to try? Yeah, I'm going to try. Good, Ellie said, snuggling deeper into her blankets. Because she looks at you like butterflies look at flowers. What does that mean? Like she needs you to be yourself. Daniel kissed his daughter's forehead, marveling at her wisdom. When did you get so smart? I told you, I've always been smart. You just forget sometimes. He left her to sleep and returned to the balcony, pulling out his phone. A text from Victoria was waiting. Thank you for tonight, for letting me into your world. I know I don't fit there perfectly yet, but I want to learn how. Daniel typed back, You fit better than you think. We'll figure out the rest together. Her response came immediately. Together. I like that word. So did Daniel. After 3 years of doing everything alone, together sounded like the best word in the world. Victoria did come back the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that, until her presence in the bookstore became as natural as the morning light filtering through the front windows. She'd arrive during her lunch breaks, sometimes with takeout for Daniel, sometimes just with herself in whatever crisis she was navigating at work. She'd sit in the corner with her laptop while Ellie did homework after school, and Daniel would catch them exchanging conspiratorial glances that both warmed and terrified him. 3 weeks passed like this. 3 weeks of carefully constructed normal, of pretending they were just friends spending time together, of ignoring the tension that built every time their hands brushed or their eyes held a moment too long. 3 weeks of Daniel lying awake at night wondering when the other shoe would drop, because surely this couldn't last. Surely Victoria would wake up one day and realize she'd made a mistake, that a struggling bookstore owner and his daughter weren't worth the complications she was inviting into her meticulously controlled life. But she kept coming back. It was a Thursday afternoon in late October when everything shifted. Daniel was restocking the poetry section while Victoria worked at a nearby table, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice tight with frustration. "Mark, I understand the timeline, but we're talking about rushing a product that isn't ready. The user testing showed clear issues with the interface, and if we launch now—" She paused, listening. "I know what the board wants. I'm telling you what the product needs." Another pause, longer this time. Her jaw clenched. "Fine. Yes, I'll have the revised proposal by Monday." She ended the call and sat very still, staring at her laptop screen without really seeing it. Daniel approached carefully. "Everything okay?" "They want to rush the launch, skip essential testing phases because some competitor announced something similar, and now everyone's panicking." Victoria rubbed her temples. "I've spent 18 months on this project, 18 months getting it right, and they're willing to throw all of that away for 3 weeks of market advantage. Can you push back?" "I just did. You heard how well that went." She looked up at him, and Daniel saw something he hadn't seen before. Defeat. "This is what I do, Daniel. I build things I don't believe in because someone else decided they were important, and I'm good at it, so I keep doing it, and every day I feel a little bit less like myself, and a little bit more like a very expensive machine that produces quarterly growth." Daniel sat down across from her. "So stop." Victoria laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Stop. Right. Just walk away from 15 years of career building, from the salary that pays for my apartment, and my life, and everything I've worked toward. Just stop." "I didn't say it was easy. I said you could do it." "You don't understand what you're asking." "Don't I?" Daniel gestured around the bookstore. "I walked away from a career in publishing 3 years ago, took a massive pay cut, lost most of my friends, became the cautionary tale everyone whispered about at industry events. And yeah, I'm struggling now. Yeah, I might lose this place, but at least I'm struggling towards something I believe in instead of succeeding at something that makes me miserable." Victoria's eyes flashed. "That's easy to say when you have a safety net. When you own property and have family support and—" "Family support?" Daniel felt anger rising, sharp and unexpected. "My ex-wife left me with a failing business and a daughter to raise alone. My parents haven't spoken to me since I quit my job because they thought I was throwing my life away. I've maxed out 2 credit cards keeping this place running, and I'm 1 bad month away from bankruptcy. So don't tell me about safety nets, Victoria. Don't assume you know what I've sacrificed." They stared at each other across the table, the air between them crackling with tension. Victoria's cheeks were flushed, her breathing quick. "I'm sorry," she said finally, quietly. "You're right. I don't know your situation. I'm scared, Daniel. I'm terrified of wanting something different because what if I try and fail? What if I give up everything I've built and discover I'm not actually capable of being happy? What if you are?" That's almost more frightening. The bell above the door chimed. Ellie burst in, backpack bouncing, Emma trailing behind her. Both girls stopped short when they saw Daniel and Victoria's faces. "Are you guys fighting?" Ellie asked, her voice small. "No, Bug. Just talking." Daniel forced a smile. "How was school?" "Fine." But Ellie's eyes stayed on Victoria, worried. "Are you sad?" Victoria's expression softened. "A little bit, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups get sad about work stuff." "My dad gets sad about work stuff too," Ellie announced, coming closer. "He tries to hide it, but I can tell. He does this thing where he stares at his computer and sighs really loud and doesn't notice when I'm talking to him." "Thanks for that, Elle," Daniel muttered. "Is it about money?" Emma asked with the blunt curiosity of 8-year-olds. "My mom says everything bad is always about money." "Emma," Ellie hissed, "you can't just say that." "Why not? It's true. My dad lost his job and now my parents fight about money all the time and—" "Okay," Daniel interrupted gently. "Why don't you two go grab a snack from upstairs? I got those cookies you like." The girls disappeared up to the apartment and the bookstore fell quiet again. Victoria was looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "She's right," Victoria said. "It is about money. Not just money, but what money represents. Security, control, the ability to protect yourself from chaos. She paused. I grew up poor, Daniel, like really poor. Food stamps and eviction notices poor. My parents worked 3 jobs between them and we still barely made it. I watched them break themselves trying to survive, and I promised myself I'd never be that vulnerable again. Daniel's anger evaporated. Victoria. So I studied harder than everyone else, worked longer hours, climbed faster, and every promotion, every raise, every zero I added to my salary felt like putting distance between me and that scared little girl who wore the same 3 outfits to school because they were all we could afford. Victoria's voice cracked. And now I have more money than I know what to do with, and I'm still that scared little girl. Still terrified that if I stop controlling everything, it'll all fall apart. Daniel moved around the table, pulled her to her feet, and wrapped his arms around her. For a moment she resisted, her body rigid, and then she collapsed into him, her face pressed against his chest. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to want something without controlling it. I don't know how to be with you without trying to fix everything that's broken in your life. I don't know how to just be. Then we'll figure it out together. Remember? That's what we said. I'm going to mess this up. Probably. I'm going to mess it up too. That's what people do. Daniel pulled back enough to see her face. But, Victoria, you have to decide what you're more afraid of, trying and failing or never trying at all. She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face for something he hoped she found. Then she kissed him, properly this time, not the tentative brush from the balcony, but something deeper, more desperate. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and Daniel let himself fall into it, into her, into the terrifying possibility of this actually being real. When they broke apart, they were both breathing hard. I'm falling in love with you, Victoria said, the words tumbling out like a confession. I've been falling since the moment I sat on you in that cafe, and it's terrifying because I don't know how to do this without destroying it. I destroy things, Daniel. It's what I do when I get scared. I find the weakness and I exploit it until there's nothing left worth saving. You won't destroy this. How do you know? Because you're here. Because you keep coming back even when it's easier to run. Because you looked at my daughter and saw someone worth knowing instead of an obligation. Daniel cupped her face in his hands. I'm falling in love with you too, Victoria. And yeah, I'm scared. I'm scared you'll wake up one day and realize you deserve someone who has their life together. Someone who can give you the stability you need. I'm scared that I'm not enough, that this life I'm building isn't enough. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. That's the most romantic and terrifying thing anyone's ever said to me. I contain multitudes. Victoria laughed through tears. You really do. They stood there holding each other in the empty bookstore, the afternoon light fading into evening, 2 broken people trying to figure out how to be whole together. And for the first time since his ex-wife left, Daniel let himself believe it might actually be possible. Upstairs he heard Ellie's laughter, bright and unrestrained. The sound pulled him back to reality, to the fact that this wasn't just about him and Victoria. Whatever they built, Ellie would be part of it. And Ellie had already lost one mother figure. Daniel wouldn't let her lose another. We need to talk about Ellie, he said quietly. Victoria tensed slightly. Okay. She's getting attached to you, I see it. And that's good, that's great actually, but we need to be careful. If this doesn't work out, if you decide this isn't what you want, I need you to tell me before it gets any deeper, because I can handle my own heartbreaking. I've done it before, but I can't. His voice caught. I can't watch my daughter's heart break again. I would never hurt her intentionally. I know, but sometimes intentions aren't enough. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady. I can't promise this will work. I can't promise I won't get scared and try to run, but I can promise that if I do run, I'll tell you first. I'll give you warning. I won't just disappear. She met his eyes. And Daniel, I'm more attached to her than I've ever been to anyone. That little girl has gotten under my skin in a way I didn't think possible. So if we're being careful for someone's sake, maybe it should be for mine too. Because if I lose both of you, I don't think I'll recover. Daniel kissed her again, softer this time, and felt something settle in his chest. Not certainty, but commitment. They were in this together, for better or worse. The next few weeks tested that commitment in ways Daniel hadn't anticipated. Victoria's work situation deteriorated rapidly. The product launch she'd opposed went forward despite her objections, and when it failed spectacularly, exactly the way she'd predicted, the board blamed her for not pushing back hard enough. She came to the bookstore one evening in early November, her face drawn, and told Daniel she'd been put on probation. "They're looking for a reason to fire me," she said, sitting at their kitchen table while Ellie slept down the hall. "Mark told me off the record. They want someone younger, cheaper, more willing to take risks without asking questions. I've become a liability." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." Victoria stared at her untouched wine glass. "Part of me wants to fight, to prove them wrong, to show them I'm essential. But the other part," she looked up at him, "the other part wants to walk away, to finally choose something for myself instead of waiting for someone else to choose for me." "What do you want to choose?" "This," she gestured between them. "You, Ellie. A life that doesn't revolve around quarterly earnings and market share. But Daniel, I'm so scared. What if I quit and then we don't work out? What if I give up my entire career for a relationship that falls apart in 6 months?" Daniel sat down across from her, took her hands. "What if it doesn't fall apart? What if you quit and discover you're happier than you've ever been? What if we build something together that's better than anything either of us could build alone?" "You're asking me to take a leap of faith. I'm asking you to trust yourself. Trust us." He squeezed her hands. "But Victoria, you have to decide. I can't decide for you. This has to be your choice, not something you do because you feel pressured or because you're running away from something. It has to be something you run toward." "I don't know how to do that." "Then start small. Don't quit tomorrow. Don't burn any bridges. Just start imagining what you'd do if money and fear weren't factors. What would make you happy?" Victoria closed her eyes. When she opened them, there were tears on her cheeks. "This. Being here with you, helping Ellie with her homework, reading on the couch while you close up the store. Wednesday afternoons that turn into Thursday evenings that turn into whole weekends where I forget to check my phone." She paused. "Maybe working with you, helping you save this place, using my skills for something that matters instead of something that just makes money." "You'd want to work at a failing bookstore?" "I'd want to work at a bookstore that doesn't have to fail." "You have vision, Daniel. You have passion and integrity and everything that makes a business meaningful. You just need structure and strategy and someone who knows how to translate dreams into actionable plans." She leaned forward. "Let me help you, not fix you, not take over, just help. Partner with me." Daniel felt something shift, felt possibility opening up in a way it hadn't in 3 years. "Are you serious?" "Completely. I've been thinking about this for weeks, running numbers in my head, seeing opportunities you can't see because you're too close to it. This place could work, Daniel. It could be sustainable and profitable and everything you dreamed it could be. It just needs," she smiled, "it just needs a little metamorphosis. Like butterflies." "Exactly like butterflies. The bookstore you have now is the caterpillar, but there's a butterfly waiting inside if you're willing to go through the transformation." Daniel wanted to say yes immediately, wanted to grab this lifeline she was offering. But he forced himself to think, to consider the implications. If Victoria invested in the bookstore, it would tie them together financially. If the relationship failed, they'd still be bound by business. It was exactly the kind of complication he'd spent 3 years avoiding. But maybe that was the point. Maybe commitment meant choosing the complication, choosing to be bound together in ways that couldn't be easily undone. "I'll need to see your numbers," he said finally. "Your actual plan, not just ideas, because I won't let you save this place out of pity or obligation or some misguided attempt to prove something." "Deal. I'll put together a proper proposal." Victoria's smile turned mischievous. "Fair warning, I'm very good at proposals. You're probably going to say yes." "Probably." They worked together over the next 2 weeks, Victoria bringing her laptop to the bookstore every evening after Ellie went to bed. She analyzed Daniel's sales data, his inventory, his overhead costs. She interviewed his few regular customers about what they wanted, what would make them come more often, what would make them tell their friends. And slowly, a plan took shape. Community events, author readings, book clubs, a small cafe corner serving good coffee and pastries, partnerships with local schools, an online presence that actually functioned, children's story hours on weekends, writing workshops, space for local artists to display their work. "You're turning it into a community center that happens to sell books," Daniel observed one night, studying her detailed spreadsheet. "I'm turning it into what it was always supposed to be. A place for people to connect, to belong, to find themselves." Victoria pointed to a chart. "The books are important, but they're not the only draw. People will come for the events, for the coffee, for the community. And while they're here, they'll buy books. Books they might have bought online, but now they're buying them from you because you've given them a reason to care. This is going to cost money. Money I don't have. Money I do have." Victoria pulled out another document. "Here's what I'm proposing. I invest $75,000 in renovations and operating capital. In exchange, I become a 20% partner in the business. You retain majority ownership and full creative control. I provide business strategy and operational support. We formalize it legally, put everything in writing, keep it professional." Daniel stared at the number. $75,000. It was more money than he'd see in 3 years of current sales. It was salvation. It was everything he needed. It was terrifying. "Why 20%? He asked. "You're putting in all the money. You should get more." "Because it's your dream, not mine. I'm just helping you build it." Victoria met his eyes. "I don't want to take over, Daniel. I want to be part of something that matters. There's a difference." "What happens if we break up?" The question hung in the air between them. Victoria didn't flinch. "The partnership agreement stands. We're adults. We can separate the personal from the professional if we need to." She paused. "But I don't think we will need to. I think we're building something that lasts." "How can you be sure?" "I can't. But I'm choosing to believe it anyway. That's what faith is, right? Believing in something you can't prove?" Daniel looked at the proposal, at the numbers that would save his bookstore, at the woman who was offering him everything he'd been too afraid to ask for. And he thought about metamorphosis, about caterpillars dissolving into goo before they became butterflies, about how transformation required breaking down before you could be rebuilt. "Okay," he said, "let's do it." Victoria's face lit up in a way that made her look 10 years younger. "Really? Really? But we do this right. Lawyers, contracts, everything properly documented. And we tell Ellie together, because this affects her too." "Agreed." They shook hands formally, then laughed at the absurdity of it, and kissed instead. And for the first time since his ex-wife left, Daniel felt like he might actually survive this. More than survive. He might actually build something beautiful from the ruins. They told Ellie the next morning over pancakes. Daniel had been worried about how to explain the business arrangement, but Ellie surprised him by understanding immediately. "So Victoria is going to help save the bookstore?" she asked, syrup dripping from her fork. "That's right, Bug." "And she'll be here more?" "A lot more." "Is that okay with you?" Ellie looked at Victoria seriously. "Are you going to be nice to my dad? Because he's really good, and he deserves someone who's nice to him." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I'm going to try my very best, sweetheart. He deserves someone who sees how special he is." "Good." Ellie returned to her pancakes, satisfied. "Also, can the bookstore have a cat? Mrs. Chen has a cat in her store, and everyone loves it. We could get a cat and name it Monarch, like the butterfly." Daniel laughed. "We'll see, Bug." "That means yes," Ellie cheered. Later, after Ellie left for school, Victoria pulled Daniel aside. "She's worried about you," she said quietly, "about whether I'll hurt you. She's protecting you. She's always been protective, ever since her mom left. It's more than that. She sees how you hide your loneliness. She knows you're struggling even though you try not to show it." Victoria touched his face gently. "You don't have to hide with me, Daniel. I see all of it, and I'm still here." "I know. It's just hard to trust that." "Then let me prove it, not just with the bookstore, but with everything. Let me show you what it looks like when someone stays." Daniel pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. "I'm terrified of how much I need you." "Good. I'm terrified of how much I need you too. We can be terrified together." They stood there in his small kitchen, holding each other against the uncertainties of the future, and Daniel realized that this was what courage looked like. Not the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward despite it. Not certainty, but commitment. Not perfect, but real. And for two people who'd spent years building walls against vulnerability, real was the bravest thing they could choose. The lawyers made everything feel more real and more frightening at the same time. Daniel sat in a conference room that smelled like leather and old money, watching Victoria negotiate terms with a calm precision that reminded him exactly how different their worlds were. She understood every clause, every implication, every potential pitfall. He just nodded and tried not to feel like he was signing away the last piece of his independence. "You okay?" Victoria asked when they finally left, contracts signed and notarized, their partnership now legally binding. "Ask me in 6 months." Still having doubts? Daniel looked at her, at the way afternoon light caught in her hair, at the hope shining in her eyes. "Not about you. Never about you. Just about whether I'm capable of actually succeeding at something this big." "You're not doing it alone anymore," she reminded him gently. "That's the whole point." The renovation started the following week. Victoria had hired a contractor she trusted, someone who understood the vision of preserving the bookstore's character while making it functional and welcoming. The first day of demolition, Daniel stood outside watching strangers tear apart walls he'd painted himself 3 years ago, and felt like he was watching his past being systematically dismantled. Second thoughts? Mrs. Chen appeared beside him, arms crossed, her expression knowing. 10th or 11th thoughts, probably. "That girl of yours knows what she's doing." "She's not my girl," Mrs. Chen snorted. "Please, I've been watching you two dance around each other for weeks. She's your girl, you're her boy, and if you don't stop being so stubborn about it, you're both going to waste time you don't have. It's complicated. Love is always complicated. That's what makes it worth it." Mrs. Chen patted his arm. "My Henry, rest his soul. He was complicated too. Stubborn as a mule, terrible with money, couldn't cook to save his life. But he loved me fiercely, and I loved him back, and we built something beautiful together. That's what you're doing now, building something beautiful. Don't let fear convince you it's not real." Daniel watched Victoria through the bookstore window, gesturing animatedly as she discussed something with the contractor. She'd taken 2 weeks of vacation time to oversee the renovation personally, which meant she was here every day from dawn until well past dark, managing every detail with the same intensity she probably brought to her corporate projects. "What if I let her down?" Daniel asked quietly. "What if the bookstore fails anyway and she loses her investment and realizes she wasted her time on me? What if it succeeds and you spend the rest of your life grateful you were brave enough to try?" Mrs. Chen squeezed his arm. "Stop looking for reasons to fail, Daniel. Start looking for reasons to succeed." She left him standing there, and Daniel let her words sink in. She was right. He'd spent 3 years preparing for failure, building contingency plans, protecting himself from disappointment. Maybe it was time to prepare for success instead. He walked into the bookstore, into the dust and chaos, and found Victoria arguing with the contractor about the cafe corner. "I'm telling you, if we move it 6 feet to the left, we get better natural light and more seating space," she was saying. "And I'm telling you, the plumbing is where the plumbing is. Moving it means rerouting pipes, which means more money and more time." "How much more?" The contractor quoted a number. Victoria didn't even blink. "Do it. The light is worth it." Daniel waited until the contractor left before speaking. "You don't have to spend more money. The plan was already generous." Victoria turned to him, her face smudged with dust, her expensive clothes covered in drywall powder. She looked more alive than he'd ever seen her. "I'm not doing this out of obligation, Daniel. I'm doing it because I want to, because this matters to me." She gestured around the space. "Do you know what I did yesterday? I spent 4 hours researching the best commercial espresso machines. 4 hours. I haven't been that engaged in anything work-related in 5 years. This is fun. This is actually fun." "You have a strange definition of fun," says the man who thinks alphabetizing poetry collections by author's middle name is a productive use of time. "That was one time, and I was avoiding calling my ex-wife's lawyer." Victoria laughed, crossed to him, and kissed him despite the dust covering both of them. "We're really doing this. We really are. Are you scared?" Terrified. Good. Me too. But I'm excited too. Is that weird? Being scared and excited at the same time? Daniel pulled her closer. I think that's called being alive. The renovation took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of chaos and noise and constant decisions. 3 weeks of Victoria essentially moving into the apartment above the bookstore, claiming she needed to be on site, but really just wanting to be near Daniel and Ellie. 3 weeks of the three of them becoming something that felt dangerously close to a family. Ellie adapted to Victoria's presence with ease that both delighted and worried Daniel. She'd taken to calling Victoria V and treated her like a cross between a big sister and a co-conspirator. They had inside jokes Daniel didn't understand, secret projects they wouldn't tell him about, whispered conversations that stopped when he entered the room. Should I be concerned? He asked Victoria one evening while Ellie was at Emma's house for a sleepover. About what? About how attached she's getting. About what happens when you eventually go back to your real life and she has to adjust to you not being here constantly. Victoria set down the paint samples she'd been studying. My real life? This is my real life, Daniel. What I had before, that was the fantasy. The carefully constructed performance of success. This, right here, this is real. You say that now. But what about when the renovation is done and the excitement wears off? What about when you remember you have a career and an apartment and responsibilities that don't include picking out curtain colors? I quit my job. The words dropped into the room like stones into still water. Daniel stared at her. You what? I quit 2 days ago, gave my official notice, negotiated a severance package, handed off my projects. Victoria's voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly. I was going to tell you, I just hadn't found the right moment. Victoria, you can't just quit your job because of this, because of me. What if... Stop. Stop doing that thing where you assume this is all about you. She stood up, pacing. I quit because I was miserable. Because every morning I woke up dreading the day ahead. Because I was making a lot of money to be profoundly unhappy. And that's not a trade I'm willing to make anymore. But your career will survive. I'm good at what I do, Daniel. If I want another corporate job in 6 months or a year, I can get one. But right now, I don't want that. I want this. I want mornings planning bookstore events, and afternoons helping Ellie with homework, and evenings cooking dinner with you. I want to build something that matters instead of something that just makes money. Daniel couldn't breathe properly. You're sure? You're absolutely sure. I'm terrified and sure at the same time, which according to you means I'm alive. Victoria crossed to him, took his face in her hands. I love you, Daniel Brooks. I'm in love with you in a way I didn't know was possible, and I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you and Ellie and the bookstore and this messy, complicated, beautiful life we're building together. So please stop giving me reasons to doubt that choice and just let me make it. I love you too, Daniel whispered, the words feeling both terrifying and inevitable. I've been in love with you since you sat on me in that cafe and laughed, like you'd forgotten what joy sounded like. They kissed, and it felt like sealing a promise neither of them fully understood yet, but both were willing to honor. When they pulled apart, Victoria was crying. I'm so scared I'm going to mess this up, she admitted. I don't know how to be in a relationship. I don't know how to be someone's partner. I don't know how to be a parental figure to a child who isn't mine. I'm going to make so many mistakes. So will I. We'll make them together. Daniel wiped her tears with his thumbs. But Victoria, you need to understand something. If you're doing this, if you're really committing to this life with us, then you're all in. You can't run when it gets hard. You can't bail when you get scared. Ellie has already lost one mother. I won't let her lose another. I'm not going anywhere, Victoria said firmly. I promise you, I'm not going anywhere. Daniel wanted to believe her. God, he wanted to believe her. But he'd heard promises before from his ex-wife, from friends who swore they'd support his dream, from his own parents who said they'd understand. Promises were easy. Keeping them was the hard part. But he nodded, chose to trust, chose to leap with her into the unknown. The bookstore reopened on a Friday in late November, just before Thanksgiving. They'd sent invitations to everyone on Daniel's mailing list, posted on social media, put up flyers around the neighborhood. Victoria had even convinced a local food blogger to come review the cafe corner, which now boasted the expensive espresso machine she'd researched and a small case of pastries from a bakery 2 blocks away. Daniel stood outside at dawn, looking at the renovated storefront, and felt tears prick his eyes. It was beautiful. The old character remained, the crown molding, the original hardwood floors, the built-in bookshelves, but everything had been refreshed, brightened, made welcoming. The new sign above the door read, "Brooks Books and Community," in elegant lettering, and through the window he could see the cafe corner with its small tables and warm lighting, the children's section with its colorful rug and tiny chairs, the community board already covered in flyers for local events. "It's perfect," Victoria said, appearing beside him with 2 cups of coffee from their new machine. "You should be proud." "We should be proud," Daniel corrected. "I couldn't have done this without you. You would have found a way. You're stubborn like that." She handed him a coffee, "But I'm glad I got to be part of it." They opened at 10. For the first hour, only Mrs. Chen came, bringing a potted orchid as a grand opening gift and making a show of ordering the most expensive coffee drink on the menu. Then a few curious neighbors trickled in, drawn by the new sign and the smell of fresh pastries. Then a few more. By noon, the store was buzzing with people, parents with children exploring the kids section, college students claiming tables in the cafe corner, elderly couples browsing the local history section Daniel had expanded, people talking, laughing, buying books. Ellie arrived after school with Emma and her mother, and her shriek of delight when she saw the transformation made Daniel's heart swell. "Daddy, it's so pretty, and there's so many people, and do we have a cat?" Daniel looked where she was pointing. In the window of the children's section sat a beautiful orange tabby, calm and regal, watching the chaos with feline indifference. He turned to Victoria, who was trying and failing to look innocent. "You got us a cat." "I may have adopted a cat from the shelter. His name is Monarch. He's very good with children. The shelter said so." "We didn't discuss getting a cat." "Ellie wanted a cat. You said you'd see. I helped you see." Victoria grinned. "Don't be mad. Look at him. He's perfect." The cat chose that moment to yawn widely, showing all his teeth, then curled into a ball and fell asleep. Ellie and Emma were already climbing into the window display to pet him. "He's perfect," Daniel agreed, pulling Victoria into a hug. "You're insane, but he's perfect. I prefer spontaneous to insane. I prefer we need to discuss major decisions like pet adoption. Noted for future reference." Victoria kissed his cheek. "Now stop complaining and go take care of your customers. Your bookstore is a success, Daniel Brooks. Let yourself enjoy it." The day blurred into evening, a constant stream of people and purchases and conversations. The food blogger came and took pictures and declared the cafe corner a hidden gem that perfectly balances literary charm with quality coffee. A local book club asked about reserving space for their monthly meetings. 3 different people asked about the writing workshops Victoria had mentioned in the promotional materials. By closing time, Daniel's feet hurt, and his voice was hoarse, and his bank account had seen more deposits in one day than it had in the previous 3 months combined. "We did it," he said to Victoria as they locked the door behind the last customer. "We actually did it." "You sound surprised." "I am surprised. I've spent 3 years failing at this. Why did success suddenly happen now?" Victoria gestured around the transformed space. "Because you let someone help you. Because you stopped trying to do everything alone. Because you had a vision, and I had the skills to make it happen, and together we created something neither of us could have built separately." She paused. "Also because you have really good taste in books, and I'm excellent at marketing. That helped too." Daniel laughed, pulled her close. "What did I do to deserve you?" "You sat still while I accidentally sat on you. It was very brave." "I'm never going to live that down, am I?" "Not even a little bit." Victoria rested her head against his chest. "I'm happy, Daniel. I can't remember the last time I was this happy." "Me too." They stood there in the quiet bookstore, surrounded by books and possibility, and Daniel let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, this could actually last. Upstairs, Ellie was already asleep, exhausted from the excitement of the day. Monarch curled at her feet like he'd always belonged there. Daniel and Victoria stood in her doorway watching her sleep, and Victoria's hand found his. "She asked me something today," Victoria said quietly. During the chaos, she asked if I was going to be her mom now. Daniel's heart stopped. What did you say? I said that I loved her very much, and I loved her dad very much, and that families come in all different shapes, that she gets to decide what to call me and what our relationship looks like. Victoria paused. Was that okay? I didn't want to overstep, but I also didn't want to lie to her. It was perfect, Daniel managed, his throat tight. What did she say? She said she'd think about it. Then she asked if that meant we'd get married, and I said that was up to her dad and me to figure out, and she said she hoped we would because her friend Emma's parents are divorced and it made Emma really sad. Victoria looked at him. I know we haven't talked about marriage. I know we've only been together for a few months. But Daniel, I want you to know I'm in this. However far it goes, whatever it becomes, I'm in this. Daniel kissed her, slow and deep, and full of promises he hoped he could keep. I'm in this too. And Victoria, when the time comes, when we're both ready, I'm going to ask you to marry me. Fair warning. Fair warning accepted. She smiled against his lips. But let's survive the holidays first. I'm supposed to meet your parents at Thanksgiving, right? Daniel groaned. He'd been trying not to think about that. You don't have to. They're not exactly supportive of my life choices. It'll probably be awkward and uncomfortable. All the more reason to face it together. Besides, I want to meet the people who made you, even if they don't understand what they made. Thanksgiving came too quickly. Daniel spent the entire drive to his parents' house in the suburbs trying to prepare Victoria for the experience, but he knew nothing he said would fully capture the particular brand of disappointed disapproval his parents had perfected over the years. They're going to ask about your job, he warned as they pulled into the driveway, about why you quit, about your plans, about whether you're being fiscally responsible. My dad thinks financial security is the only measure of success, and my mom thinks women should focus on traditional goals like marriage and children. So basically, I'm walking into a minefield. Basically. Victoria straightened her shoulders, gathering that corporate armor Daniel had watched her discard over the past months. Good thing I'm excellent at navigating minefields. His parents' house looked exactly the same as always, perfectly maintained, perfectly decorated, perfectly soulless. His mother opened the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Daniel, you're late. Traffic was bad. Mom, this is Victoria. Victoria, my mother, Patricia. Mrs. Brooks, it's lovely to meet you. Victoria extended her hand with confident warmth. Patricia shook it limply. Please, come in. Your father's in the den watching the game. Dinner will be ready in an hour. The afternoon unfolded exactly as Daniel had predicted. His father, Robert, interrogated Victoria about her career with the subtlety of a prosecutor. His mother made pointed comments about Daniel's life choices while serving perfectly prepared dishes that tasted like obligation. His younger sister, Michelle, who'd driven up from Portland with her surgeon husband and their two perfect children, watched the whole thing with barely concealed amusement. So let me get this straight, Robert said over turkey. You quit your job at a major tech company to help run a bookstore? That's correct, Victoria replied calmly. I'd reached a point where corporate work no longer aligned with my values. The bookstore offered an opportunity to build something meaningful. Meaningful doesn't pay the bills. Actually, we had record sales this month. The community response has been overwhelmingly positive. This month? What about next month? What about when the novelty wears off and people remember they can buy books cheaper online? Then we'll adapt. That's what good businesses do. Robert snorted. You sound like Daniel, full of optimism, short on practical planning. Dad, Daniel started, but Victoria touched his hand under the table. With respect, Mr. Brooks, Daniel has plenty of practical planning. He's kept that bookstore running for 3 years on minimal capital and no support system. That takes more than optimism. That takes resilience and creativity and the kind of determination most people don't have. She paused. I have an MBA from Stanford and 15 years of corporate experience. I wouldn't have invested my time and money in Brooks Books if I didn't believe in its viability. But more importantly, I wouldn't have invested in Daniel if I didn't believe in him. The table fell silent. Michelle was grinning openly now. Patricia looked like she'd bitten into something sour. Robert stared at Victoria with an expression Daniel couldn't quite read. Well, Robert said finally, At least someone is taking this seriously. It wasn't approval, not exactly, but it was closer than Daniel had gotten in 3 years. He squeezed Victoria's hand gratefully. After dinner, while helping with dishes, Patricia cornered Victoria in the kitchen. "I need to ask you something," she said without preamble. "Are you serious about my son?" Victoria didn't hesitate. "Completely. And his daughter? You understand what you're taking on there? She's not yours. Her mother could come back at any time and complicate things. Ellie's mother signed away her parental rights 2 years ago. She's not coming back." Victoria's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "And even if she did, it wouldn't change how I feel about Ellie. I love that little girl. She's smart and funny and kind, and I'm honored she's letting me into her life." Patricia studied her for a long moment. "My son has been hurt very badly. By his ex-wife, by this business, by life in general. If you're not absolutely certain about this, you should walk away now before you do more damage." "I'm certain," Victoria said firmly. "I'm more certain about Daniel and Ellie than I've been about anything in my entire life." "Then you're either very brave or very foolish." "Probably both, but I'm committed either way." Patricia's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Good. He deserves someone who's committed. Even if I don't understand his choices, I want him to be happy." It was the closest thing to a blessing Victoria was going to get, and she took it. On the drive home, Daniel was quiet, processing the afternoon. Victoria let him think, her hand resting on his knee, a steady presence in the darkness. "Thank you," he said finally, "for standing up to my dad, for defending me, for being exactly who you are, even when it would have been easier to just agree with them. I love you. That means defending you, even from your own family." Victoria paused. "They're not bad people, Daniel. They're just scared. They watched you struggle, watched you get hurt, and they don't want it to happen again. They just don't understand that preventing hurt isn't the same as enabling happiness." "When did you get so wise?" "Since I fell in love with a man who teaches me every day that vulnerability isn't weakness." They drove in comfortable silence the rest of the way home, and when they arrived, they found Ellie still awake, curled on the couch with Monarch and a book. "How was it?" she asked. "Were they mean?" "They were themselves," Daniel said diplomatically. "But V handled them perfectly." Ellie studied Victoria carefully. "Did you tell them you love us?" "I did." "And did they believe you?" "I think so. Your grandma especially." "Good." Ellie returned to her book, satisfied. "Because we love you too, right, Daddy?" Daniel looked at Victoria, at this woman who'd crashed into his life by accident and stayed by choice, who'd invested her money and her time and her heart into saving his dream, who'd stood up to his parents and loved his daughter and made him believe in possibilities again. "Right," he agreed. "We love her too." And in that moment, in their small apartment above the bookstore they'd rebuilt together, with Ellie reading and Monarch purring and Victoria's hand in his, Daniel finally understood what his ex-wife had been searching for when she left. She'd been searching for this, for home, for belonging, for love that didn't require performance or perfection, just presence. She'd been searching for exactly what Daniel had found, and this time he wasn't going to let it go. Winter arrived early that year, blanketing the city in snow by the first week of December. The bookstore glowed warm against the cold, its windows frosted at the edges, steam rising from coffee cups inside. Business remained steady through the holidays, better than steady, actually, and Daniel found himself hiring 2 part-time employees just to keep up with demand. Victoria had been right about everything: the community events, the cafe corner, the welcoming atmosphere that made people want to linger. But success brought its own complications. Daniel was working longer hours than ever, managing inventory and staff, and the constant stream of customers. Victoria had thrown herself completely into the business side, handling marketing and finances and vendor relationships with the same intensity she'd once brought to corporate projects. They were building something beautiful together, but somewhere in the chaos of building, they'd stopped actually being together. It was Ellie who noticed first. "You guys are always busy now," she said one evening in mid-December, looking up from her homework with an expression too serious for an 8-year-old. "You're here, but you're not really here. You know what I mean? Daniel exchanged a guilty look with Victoria across the kitchen table. They'd both been on their laptops, working through dinner, barely talking except about business matters. "You're right, Bug," Daniel admitted, closing his computer. "We've been so focused on making the store work that we forgot to focus on us." "Ms. Peterson says balance is important in all ecosystems," Ellie said solemnly. "If one thing gets too much attention, other things die." "Your teacher is very wise," Victoria said, closing her own laptop. "What do you think we should do about it?" Ellie considered this seriously. "We should have a family day. No work, no computers, just fun stuff, like normal families do." The word family hung in the air, both perfect and terrifying. They'd been dancing around it for months, this question of what they were becoming, what they meant to each other. Victoria had been staying over most nights now, her toothbrush in the bathroom, her clothes in Daniel's closet, but they hadn't talked about making it official, hadn't talked about what came next. "A family day sounds perfect," Victoria said softly, her eyes on Daniel. "What should we do?" "Ice skating. Emma went ice skating and she said it was so fun even though she fell down 1,000,000 times." So the following Saturday, they bundled up and took the bus to the outdoor rink downtown. The sky was bright and clear, the kind of winter day that felt like a postcard. Ellie could barely contain her excitement, bouncing between Daniel and Victoria, holding both their hands. The rink was crowded with families and couples, children wobbling on uncertain skates, while parents hovered nearby. Daniel helped Ellie lace her skates while Victoria watched, something soft in her expression. "What?" Daniel asked. "Nothing. Just this. You with her. It's my favorite thing to watch." "You're getting sentimental in your old age, so." "I'm 35. Ancient, practically decrepit." Victoria swatted his arm, laughing, and for a moment they were just two people flirting, the way they had been in that cafe months ago when everything was new and uncertain and full of possibility. On the ice, Ellie was fearless, immediately pushing off and gliding away with more confidence than skill. Daniel and Victoria followed more carefully, Victoria clinging to the rail until Daniel took her hand. "I've got you," he said. "I'm going to fall and take you down with me." "Then we fall together." They skated slowly, hand in hand, watching Ellie circle them with increasing speed. Other families swirled past, the sound of laughter and scraping blades filling the air. It was perfectly ordinary and perfectly magical at the same time. "I've been thinking," Victoria said after a while. "About what Ellie said. About balance." "Me too. We need to hire someone to manage the day-to-day operations. Someone good, someone we trust, who can run things when we need to step back. Because she's right. We're losing ourselves in the work." Daniel had been thinking the same thing, but hadn't wanted to suggest it, worried it would seem like he was backing away from his responsibilities. That would mean giving up some control. "I know, but we're supposed to be partners in life, not just business. And right now, the business is consuming the life." Victoria squeezed his hand. "I didn't quit my corporate job just to recreate the same problems in a different setting. I quit because I wanted this. Time with you, time with Ellie, time to actually live instead of just work. So we find a manager. And we set boundaries. Real ones. No laptops at dinner, no working after 8, actual days off where we do things like this." She gestured around the rink. "Things that matter." "Daddy, look!" Ellie called from across the ice. "I'm going backwards." She promptly fell, but she was laughing as she scrambled back up. Victoria and Daniel skated over to her. "That was impressive, Bug, even with the fall," Daniel said. "Falls don't count if you get back up," Ellie declared. "That's what you always tell me." "Smart girl." They skated for another hour, until Ellie's cheeks were pink with cold and her legs were tired. They got hot chocolate from a vendor and sat on a bench watching other skaters, Ellie between them, her head on Victoria's shoulder. "This is my favorite day," Ellie announced. "Can we do this every Saturday?" "Maybe not every Saturday," Daniel said, "but more often. We promise." "Good. Because Emma says her parents never do fun stuff anymore because they're too busy fighting about grown-up things. I don't want you guys to be like that." Victoria met Daniel's eyes over Ellie's head, and he saw his own fears reflected there. They'd been so focused on not repeating his failed marriage, on building something better, that they'd started building a different kind of problem. Work was safer than vulnerability. Success was easier than intimacy. They'd been hiding in the bookstore the same way Victoria had once hidden in her corporate job. "We won't be like that," Victoria promised. "Your dad and I are going to make some changes. We're going to make sure we have time for what really matters." "Which is what?" Ellie asked. "You," Daniel and Victoria said at the same time, then looked at each other and smiled. "And each other," Victoria added. "We need to make time for each other too." Ellie seemed satisfied with this answer. "Okay, but can we get more hot chocolate first? I'm still cold." They walked home through the snowy streets as evening fell, the city lights reflecting off the white drifts. Ellie chattered about everything and nothing, while Daniel and Victoria listened and held hands and felt the pieces of their life settling into place. But settling into place didn't mean everything was solved. The next week brought new challenges. The assistant manager Victoria had hired, a capable woman named Sarah, who'd run an independent bookstore in Portland before it closed, needed training. The holiday rush intensified. A pipe burst in the cafe corner requiring emergency repairs. Daniel's ex-wife's lawyer sent papers about modifying the custody arrangement, even though she'd shown no interest in Ellie for 3 years. And through it all, Daniel felt the old anxiety creeping back, the certainty that this was too good to last, that something would break. It broke on a Tuesday evening, 2 weeks before Christmas. Victoria had been on the phone for an hour, pacing the apartment while Daniel made dinner and helped Ellie with a school project. When she finally hung up, her face was pale. "That was my former boss," she said without preamble. "They want me back. New position, VP of Innovation, basically my own division to run however I want. Double my old salary, full benefits, stock options." The words landed like grenades in the quiet kitchen. Ellie looked up from her construction paper snowflakes, sensing tension. "What did you say?" Daniel asked carefully. "I said I'd think about it." Daniel's hand stilled on the vegetables he'd been chopping. "You'd think about it. It's a lot of money, Daniel, enough that we wouldn't have to worry about the bookstore making it through slow months, enough that we could—" She stopped. "Could what? Could stop pretending this is enough for you?" "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Daniel set down the knife, trying to keep his voice level for Ellie's sake. "Because it sounds like you're having second thoughts. About the bookstore, about us, about this life we're building." "I'm having questions, not second thoughts. There's a difference." Victoria's voice rose slightly. "I gave up a career for this, Daniel. I invested everything into making your dream work. And it is working, better than either of us expected. But that doesn't mean I don't miss having my own thing, my own identity that isn't just Daniel's partner or the woman who saved the bookstore. Nobody asked you to give up your identity. You didn't have to ask. It's what happens when you merge your life with someone else's. You lose pieces of yourself." She ran her hands through her hair, frustrated. "I love you. I love Ellie. I love what we've built together. But I'm 35 years old and I'm starting to wonder what I'm sacrificing for this." Ellie's chair scraped back. "I'm going to my room," she said quietly, gathering her art supplies. "Ellie, wait!" Victoria started, but Ellie was already gone, her door closing with a soft click that felt louder than a slam. Daniel and Victoria stared at each other across the kitchen, the space between them feeling suddenly vast. "You should take the job," Daniel said finally, his voice flat. "If that's what you want, if that's what you need to feel whole, then take it. I won't stop you. Don't do that. Don't shut down and go cold. That's what you do when you're scared, and it's not fair. What's not fair is you accepting my investment, my trust, my heart, and then deciding it's not enough. What's not fair is letting Ellie fall in love with you and then considering leaving. I'm not leaving. I'm considering a job offer, Daniel, not abandoning you. It's the same thing. That job will consume you. You know it will. You'll be back to early mornings and late nights and business trips and all the things you said you hated about your old life. And where does that leave Ellie and me? Waiting for the scraps of your time? Being grateful for whatever attention you can spare?" Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "Why can't you trust me? Why can't you believe that I can have both? That I can have a career and a relationship and a life that includes all the things that matter to me?" "Because I've been here before." Daniel's control finally snapped. Because my ex-wife said the same things. She said we could make it work, that she could balance everything, that her career didn't have to threaten what we were building. And then she left anyway because it was too hard, because I wasn't enough, because the bookstore wasn't enough. And I'm not doing that again. I'm not setting myself up to be abandoned again. I'm not her, Victoria said, her voice breaking. I am not your ex-wife, Daniel. I'm not going to leave you. Then prove it. Tell them no. Choose us. The silence stretched between them, painful and heavy. Victoria wrapped her arms around herself, tears streaming down her face. I can't, she whispered. I can't make that promise right now. Not like this. Not with you giving me ultimatums. That's not how this works. Then how does it work, Victoria? Tell me. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're looking for an exit. I'm looking for myself, Victoria's voice rose. I'm trying to figure out who I am when I'm not performing for someone else. I thought I'd found that here with you, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe I just traded one performance for another. The words hung in the air like poison. Daniel felt something crack inside his chest, something that had already been broken once and poorly mended. Get out, he said quietly. Victoria stared at him. What? Get out. If this is a performance, if being here is such a burden, then leave. Take the job. Go back to your old life. We'll be fine. Daniel, I mean it, Victoria. I can't do this. I can't watch you stand there and decide whether we're worth it. Either you want to be here or you don't. Either you love us enough to stay or you don't. But I won't beg you. I won't convince you. I did that with my ex-wife and it didn't matter. So make your choice. Victoria grabbed her coat with shaking hands. Fine. I'll make my choice. But Daniel, you're doing exactly what you accuse everyone else of doing. You're running away because you're scared. You're pushing me out before I can leave on my own. That's not love. That's cowardice. She left, the apartment door closing behind her with a finality that made Daniel's knees weak. He stood in the kitchen, surrounded by half-made dinner and Ellie's abandoned art project, and wondered how everything had fallen apart so fast. A small sound made him turn. Ellie stood in the hallway, tears streaming down her face. You made her leave, she said, her voice small and broken. Why did you make her leave? Daniel wanted to explain, to justify, to make Ellie understand that he was protecting them both. But looking at his daughter's devastated face, he realized Victoria had been right. He was a coward. He'd pushed her away before she could hurt them, but in doing so, he'd hurt them anyway. He'd hurt all of them. I messed up, Bug, he said, his own voice cracking. I messed up really bad. Ellie ran to him, and he held her while she cried, while they both cried, mourning something that maybe hadn't had to end. The next 3 days were the longest of Daniel's life. He called Victoria, but she didn't answer. He texted and got nothing back. He showed up at her apartment, but she wouldn't open the door, just spoke through it in a voice that sounded like she'd been crying as much as he had. I need time, Daniel. Please, just give me time. So he gave her time, even though it was killing him. Even though Ellie asked about her every day, and he had no good answers. Even though the bookstore felt empty without her, even with customers and staff and all the trappings of success they'd built together. Sarah found him in the back office on the third day, staring at financial reports he wasn't actually reading. You need to fix this, she said without preamble. I don't know how. Yes, you do. You apologize. You tell her you were wrong. You stop protecting yourself and start fighting for her. What if she still takes the job? What if she still leaves? Sarah sat down across from him. Daniel, I ran a bookstore for 15 years. I loved that store more than anything except my family. And when it started failing, my husband begged me to let it go. He said we could move, start over, that the store wasn't worth destroying our marriage over, and I didn't listen. I held on until we lost everything, the store and the marriage. She paused. You know what I learned? The things we build matter, but the people we build them with matter more. Victoria didn't save this bookstore. You two saved it together, and that partnership, that relationship, that's worth more than any job offer or any fear of failure. I told her to leave, Daniel said quietly. I gave her an ultimatum. Then you take it back. You tell her you were scared and stupid and you're sorry, and then you listen to what she actually needs instead of assuming she's going to hurt you. Daniel looked at Sarah, this woman he'd known for barely 2 weeks who somehow saw right through him, and felt something shift. She was right. He'd been so busy protecting himself from potential pain that he'd created actual pain. He'd punished Victoria for crimes his ex-wife committed. He'd let his past poison his present. "I need to go," he said, standing abruptly. "Yes, you do. I'll close up." Daniel grabbed his coat and ran. Victoria's apartment was across town, a sleek modern building that still felt foreign to him even though he'd been there dozens of times. He buzzed her unit, waited, buzzed again. "Daniel, I told you I need time." "I know, I'm sorry, but I need to say something, and I need to say it now, and then I'll give you all the time you want. Please, Victoria, please let me in." A long pause, then the door buzzed. Daniel took the elevator up, his heart pounding, and found Victoria waiting in her doorway. She looked exhausted, her eyes red, her face pale. She was wearing one of his old sweatshirts. "You're wearing my sweatshirt," he said stupidly. "I took it from your apartment. I hope that's okay." "It's more than okay." They stood there in her hallway, neither moving, neither speaking, until finally Victoria stepped back. "Come in." Her apartment was immaculate as always, but there were signs of life now that hadn't been there months ago. Ellie's butterfly book on the coffee table. A photo of the three of them at the bookstore's opening, his jacket draped over her chair. "I'm sorry," Daniel said before he lost his nerve. "I'm so sorry, Victoria. You were right. I was scared and I pushed you away before you could hurt me. I gave you an ultimatum because I was trying to control the situation. And that's not fair, and it's not love, and it's not what you deserve." Victoria sat on her couch, pulling her knees to her chest. "Why are you really here, Daniel?" "Because I love you. Because I'm miserable without you. Because Ellie cries herself to sleep asking when you're coming home, and I can't tell her because I don't know." He moved closer, knelt in front of her. "Because I was wrong. About everything. You're not my ex-wife. You're not going to abandon us. You're Victoria Hale, the bravest person I know, and you deserve to have a career and a relationship and whatever else you want in this life." "I turned down the job," Victoria said quietly. Daniel's breath caught. "What?" "I turned it down. Called them yesterday and said no." She looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. "Not because of your ultimatum. Not because I was scared of losing you, though I was. I turned it down because it wasn't what I wanted. I spent 3 days thinking about what my life would look like with that job, and I realized I'd just be running back to what felt safe instead of running toward what makes me happy." Victoria Sion, "Let me finish. I turned down the job, but that doesn't solve the problem. I still need my own identity. I still need something that's mine." She took a shaky breath. "I've been thinking about starting a consulting business, helping other small businesses do what we did with the bookstore. Find their identity, build community, create sustainable models. I could work from home, set my own hours, choose my own clients. It would be mine, but it wouldn't consume me." Daniel felt hope blooming in his chest. "That sounds perfect. That sounds exactly right for you. But I need you to trust me. I need you to believe that I can have both, my work and us. I need you to stop waiting for me to leave." Victoria's voice broke. "I need you to let me love you without constantly testing whether I mean it. I know. I'm sorry. I'll work on it. I promise I'll work on it." Daniel took her hands. "And Victoria, I'm proud of you. For turning down the job, yeah, but more for figuring out what you actually want. For not just reacting to my fear, but making your own choice. That's brave. That's so brave." Victoria started crying, really crying, and Daniel pulled her into his arms. "I was so scared," she sobbed against his shoulder. "I was scared you didn't want me anymore, that I'd ruined everything, that I'd finally found a family and I'd destroyed it." "You didn't destroy anything. I almost did, but you didn't." Daniel held her tighter. "Come home, Victoria. Please come home. Ellie needs you. I need you. The bookstore feels wrong without you. Everything feels wrong without you." "I missed you so much," Victoria whispered. "I missed Ellie and Monarch and our stupid tiny kitchen and the way you hum while you alphabetize books." "I don't hum." "You absolutely hum. It's adorable and annoying." Daniel pulled back enough to see her face. "I love you. I'm in love with you, and I want to marry you someday, when we're both ready, when we figured out how to trust this completely. But even if we never get married, even if we never make it official, I want you to know you're my family. You and Ellie, you're my family, and I'm choosing you every day for the rest of my life if you'll let me." Victoria kissed him, tasting like tears and hope and coming home. "I'm choosing you too, every day, even when it's hard, even when we mess up. I'm choosing us." They sat there on her couch, holding each other, and slowly the pieces that had broken began to fit back together. Not perfectly, maybe never perfectly, but good enough, real enough, whole enough to build on. "Should we go home?" Victoria asked eventually. "I want to see Ellie. I want to apologize to her for the fight. She'll be so happy to see you. She made you something, a whole book of drawings about butterflies and metamorphosis and families that choose each other." "She made me a book?" "She's been working on it every day since you left. She said you needed to know that families don't give up on each other, even when things are hard." Victoria started crying again. "That kid is going to destroy me." "She already has, in the best way." They gathered Victoria's things. She'd been living out of a suitcase at her apartment, even though most of her life was at Daniel's now, and headed home. The bookstore was closed for the night when they arrived, but the light in the apartment window above glowed warm and welcoming. Ellie must have heard them on the stairs because she flung open the door before they reached it. "V!" She launched herself at Victoria, who caught her and held on tight. "Hey, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I left like that. Daddy said you were figuring some things out. Did you figure them out?" "I did. I figured out that I belong here with you and your dad, that this is my home." Ellie pulled back to look at Victoria seriously. "Promise you won't leave again?" "I promise." "And Ellie, even if your dad and I fight sometimes, even if we disagree, that doesn't mean I'm leaving. Families argue sometimes, but they stay together through it. They work it out." "Like metamorphosis," Ellie said wisely. "Sometimes things have to get gooey and weird before they can become butterflies." Victoria laughed through her tears. "Exactly like that." They went inside and Ellie presented Victoria with her book, page after page of careful drawings and crooked handwriting explaining butterfly life cycles and how families are like butterflies, always changing and growing but still essentially themselves. The last page showed 3 stick figures holding hands, a tall one labeled Daddy, a medium one labeled V, and a small one labeled Me. Above them, Victoria had written in Ellie's careful printing, "My family that I chose." "I didn't write that part," Ellie said. "I left it blank because I wanted to ask you something first." "What's that, sweetheart?" Ellie looked at her father, then at Victoria, her expression more serious than any 8-year-old should have to be. "Can I call you Mom? Not like my real mom because she's not here and I don't really remember her, but like my actual mom. The one who's here and who loves me and who helps with homework and makes hot chocolate wrong." "I make it wrong?" Victoria asked, laughing and crying at the same time. "You put in too many marshmallows, but I like it anyway." Victoria looked at Daniel, asking permission with her eyes. He nodded, his own eyes wet. "I would be honored," Victoria said softly, "if you called me Mom. More honored than I can say." Ellie threw her arms around Victoria's neck. "Okay, Mom." Daniel watched his daughter and the woman he loved holding each other and felt something inside him finally heal. Not the sharp pain of broken hearts, but the deep wound of believing he wasn't worthy of being chosen. Victoria had chosen him. Ellie had chosen Victoria. They'd all chosen each other, and that choice mattered more than any promise or guarantee. That night, after Ellie was asleep, Daniel and Victoria sat on their small balcony despite the cold, wrapped in blankets, watching the city lights. "I have something for you," Daniel said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Victoria's eyes went wide. "Daniel, it's not what you think, not yet, but soon, I promise." He opened the box to reveal a simple silver bracelet with a small butterfly charm. "I got this made for you, as a reminder that transformation is possible, that change doesn't have to mean loss, that becoming something new doesn't erase what you were before." Victoria slipped the bracelet on, tears sliding down her cheeks. "It's perfect. You're perfect. Well, not perfect, but perfect for us." That's the most romantic and backhanded compliment I've ever received. "I contain multitudes." Victoria laughed, kissed him, and settled against his chest. So what now? What's next for us? Now we live. We run the bookstore together. You start your consulting business. We raise Ellie. We fight sometimes and make up. We have good days and bad days. We keep choosing each other. Daniel paused. And eventually, when the time is right, I'm going to ask you to marry me properly. Fair warning. Fair warning accepted. And Daniel, when you do ask, the answer is yes. I'm saying yes right now, so you know. I'll still ask properly. You deserve the whole thing, the speech, the nervousness, the public display. I look forward to watching you squirm. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their breath create clouds in the cold air, and Daniel thought about the journey that had brought them here. An accidental meeting in a cafe. A woman sitting on a stranger's lap. Two broken people finding each other in the chaos of their separate struggles. It wasn't the story either of them had planned. It wasn't neat or simple or without complications. But it was real. It was theirs. And it was enough, more than enough. Inside, Monarch jumped onto the windowsill, settling in to watch them with feline indifference. The bookstore below them was quiet, waiting for tomorrow's customers, tomorrow's stories, tomorrow's possibilities. And above them, the stars shone cold and distant and beautiful, witnessing two people who'd learned that love isn't about finding someone who completes you, but finding someone who helps you complete yourself. "Hey, Daniel," Victoria said sleepily. "Yeah? Thank you for waiting. At that cafe that first day. Thank you for not leaving when I was late." Daniel pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her hair. "I'll always wait for you, Victoria. That's what family does. We wait. We stay. We choose each other every single day." "Every single day," she agreed. And there, on a balcony in the cold December night, with their daughter sleeping peacefully inside and their bookstore standing solid below, Daniel Brooks and Victoria Hale began the rest of their lives. Not with certainty, but with commitment. Not with perfection, but with presence. Not with guarantees, but with hope. And really, that was all any family ever needed. The accident that should have meant nothing had meant everything. A moment's clumsiness had cracked open two carefully guarded hearts. A simple conversation had revealed two people desperate to be seen. A shared risk had built a shared life. Sometimes the universe knows exactly what it's doing when it brings two strangers together in the most unexpected ways. Sometimes the things we don't plan for are exactly the things we need. Sometimes falling, literally and figuratively, is just the beginning of learning how to fly. And sometimes, just sometimes, a family isn't something you're born into, but something you build piece by piece, choice by choice, day by ordinary day, until one morning you wake up and realize that the life you're living is exactly the life you were meant to have all along.